before we jump into this new podcast JP's going to do, let's all go around the table, state our names, and why we decided to come on the show today. And I'll start. Kyle Kingsbury, host of the podcast, and absolute pleasure to have everyone here in attendance. And we've even included my wife. So we'll go to the left clockwise.
Natasha Kingsbury, wife of the host, mother to his child, Bear. That's me. And I kind of got pulled into this, about to leave.
In the cafe.
In the cafe. So here I am. Hi.
Hi, I'm Amber Sears and new wife to JP. I'm very excited to be here. I love you guys. I'm just excited to have a great conversation. And we just moved here about a month and a half ago. So new to Austin, but loving it.
Yeah. And I'm JP Sears. The reason why I'm here today is I'm going through a transition and I'm coming out as a redhead. I'm no longer in denial of my true identity. So I'm a ginger. And Kyle, you've been one of my greatest support systems.
You've been hiding it for so long. I just wanted to give you the platform to come out and tell the world.
Yeah. Kyle's actually still hiding his by shaving it, right?
He's in denial. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Cue ball.
Hi, Krisstina Wise. I'm here because Kirk dragged me over and wanted to have a fun conversation. So here I am.
I am Kirk Parsley. Dr. Kirk Parsley, if I want to be pretentious. I'm here just because Kyle and I got to know each other at PaleoFX and just decided we had some cool stuff to talk about. And our egos determined that everyone else should hear what we talk about. And just thought it'd be fun to pull in some more people and do something other than the normal one-on-one podcast.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm scared of Kyle. I don't like being in the same room with him alone.
So we need backup. There is a level of importance to this conversation we're going to have, right?
Yes.
It's really important people hear it.
In serious, and Kyle, I have to interrupt. I've just been inspired by Kirk. I now identify as a doctor. So would you guys all please mind acknowledging me as a doctor?
Dr. Sears.
Thank you.
Dr. Sears.
Are you a medical doctor or a PhD?
I'm a PhD medical doctor and gangster rapper.
Ooh,
Triple threat
the
doctor.
doctor from the Dre.
Come on now.
I get that. You got all the doctors.
It could be a quad doc if you're a JD.
I'm not smart enough to know.
JP and JD.
We didn't learn about that in my residency, Kirk.
That's Juris doctor. Lawyer.
But not an ED.
No, you don't want ED.
You don't want the ED at the end of the name.
Y'all with your terms.
I think they should keep going.
So what's it like being here in Austin? And you moved out here, Kirk, not long ago, right?
Well, I've
you were
been
in Encinitas for a while?
San Diego.
Okay.
Yeah. The Navy took me out to San Diego in 1989, and I've kind of been there ever since. But I moved back here about 3 years ago. But I was living in New Braunfels. I couldn't decide if I was going to live in Austin or San Antonio, and I said, I'll just get a place in between and then look in both places. And then I just ended up working and never looking. And so,
is that where Schlitterbahn is?
It's a little, Schlitterbahn's a little south, maybe not. A few miles south. So yeah, Schlitterbahn.
It's a big water park. I think someone got hurt there.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people got hurt there. It's a very unsanitary place.
Oh, it was in Kansas City?
That was a Kansas City.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not here in
if
Texas,
you picture a giant trailer park that has water slides in it, that's what Schlitterbahn
That's a good
is like.
description.
Sounds like a party.
Yeah. And they do serve alcohol.
That's
It'd almost be rude if they didn't.
Yeah.
And irresponsible.
It's definitely good people watching.
Yeah, it's amazing people watching.
Yeah.
So what are some fun topics we can toss out here to talk amongst ourselves about? I remember you moderating a discussion we had at PaleoFX, and that was, if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't the death of the American male. Was it on biohacking?
It was on biohacking.
That's a lame fucking topic.
I think Kyle and Keith and Michelle put me on there to start some shit because I hate the term biohacking. I despise it. As you probably picked up on. So I was like poking people, and the only person on the stage who really had anything valid to say, in my opinion, was you. Like, these other people this is their identity. They're biohackers. And, they just have all this rigmarole and all their science, that they've extracted from very, very distant extrapolation from the actual data. Now they've concluded, well, since this says that, then we know this will happen. And so now they think they're biohacking. And to me, a hack obviously means that you're taking a shortcut. You want a result without doing the work. And that doesn't exist. It just doesn't. I mean, it might exist short term, but it's not a healthy way to go through your life. Like I asked some of the people what their favorite biohack, and one guy said hydration. I'm like, that's not a biohack, dude. Like, that's biology. That's just normal human physiology. There's nothing bio.
And does he have a $12,000 e-course teaching the biohack of hydration?
Yeah. And he probably has one of those reverse,
one of those pH systems. Yep. Salt ratio.
What was fun about that as well is that Kirk was the moderator and I was behind him watching. And this is a different world for me. I live in a completely different world as far as my audience and my message and the work that I do. But I'm there obviously to support him and to be with him. And so I'm watching this on stage with all of you on stage and Kirk moderating this. And I already know how he feels about biohacking. So I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be fun. But so there was all the panelists. And then there was this man on the end who's, just sitting up there, pretty quiet, good looking, obviously kind of fits the part. And it was Kyle at the end. And so
I thought you were talking about Ben Greenfield.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone else, Kirk's asking the questions and they have these things that they're saying. And by the end of it, whenever you would answer the questions, Kyle, like they were just such good answers. And it wasn't the bullshit that everybody else was saying. And I didn't know who you were. And I don't even think, Kirk knew your name, but he'd never really met you before. So afterwards, we both said, who is that? I asked, who is that Kyle guy? Like, he was amazing. And he's somebody we'd want to know. And Kirk said, I feel the same way. Like all of the other stuff was just bullshit. But he had something good to say, but no ego. And you're just there in your presence and saying what you had to say. And anyway, that's really the beginning of this because Kirk wanted to reach out to get to know you because he thought that's like a real person up there and has something good to say as opposed to everything else that really the whole panel became about everything else that wasn't important. So anyway.
It was like 5 individual performances of their dogma.
Yes.
Okay.
Other than Kyle was just up there actually answering the question and, having something deep and profound sometimes to say. But,
like, what's your favorite supplement? And everybody listed creatine and all the fun stuff. And I just said, LSD. Favorite supplement. Yeah. So it's for sure the best supplement.
What's your favorite biohack? And you're like, microdosing LSD. And I was like, let's run with this. You got me intrigued, right?
But he was also saying as well is that, my favorite biohack is my family. My wife and my boy. And that's what all this is about. And all this other stuff is really just the game. And, it's the part we play. But at the end of the day, if I can't spend time with them and my life isn't about that, what is all of the rest of this? And that really spoke to us. We're like, oh my gosh, like a really good answer, the right answer, the real answer.
Yeah. And that's the message that we try to, with our brands joining, that's really our message is that, all of everything we read, everything we practice, everything we work, every little tweak we're trying to do to our body, we're either trying to create more money or we're trying to create better health, longevity, more resiliency. But why do we want those things? We want those things so that we can have meaningful relationships, right? Whether they're personal or business or intimate or whatever. That's what we're doing all this for. Which is why we want you guys to come to our next event because that's exactly what the events are about. But that's an aside. Just a little social pressure to put it out there. I think now that you say that, I totally remember when you said that. I turned back and looked at her, and she was like, "Oh, yes." And I was like, "Yeah,
finally,
this is our guy."
It's not about biohacking and the latest supplement or nootropic. It's about who we care about and what we love, and that's the reason. All this other stuff is just experimentation or seeing what helps us be better at that.
Yeah. And then the first time we hung out with JP and Amber was just like a week and a half ago. We'd met at Seal Fit like almost a year ago, I think, close to a year ago. And same thing, like within the first 30 minutes, we're like, all right, these are our people.
They're like, they're real people.
There's only,
yes.
like most of the people, even the people we bring over to our house, they're like, okay. Like, they're nice enough. They're okay. Like, they're people we have relationships with, but they're not like our people, like our tribe. So this is our tribe.
I love it.
And we're going to have a little blood ceremony afterwards.
Perfect.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
Something that that occurs to me hearing you talk, Kirk, is it's almost like a biohack to see through our own bullshit. And I think like the biohacking world, much like any other world where people self-identify with their practices and their philosophies, it's like when we start to think we are what we do, we are 100% full of shit. And I've done a whole video series on how that happens in spirituality, and it sure as hell happens in health. So I one of the things I admire most in people is their ability to see through other people's bullshit. But what I admire 100% the most is when people can see through their own bullshit.
Yeah.
When we can see like, yeah, I do all this health stuff, but here's what's most real: connecting relationships and LSD for Kyle. It's, not necessarily the electrodes. Like that might be cool, but it's like having a conversation. What's the fancy biohack for exercise? Like, yeah, doing it.
Right.
It's a pretty non-bullshit, maybe pretty authentic way of looking at it.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, and even beyond that, what I thought was so cool about this, Natasha, I'm just really happy that you sat in on this, is that how many couples are out there like really living life fully together as a team? Like, let's go at this and really live life and make this about something about us and something bigger. And that's why we loved meeting and spending time with you two, because you guys are just in it together, and you just, the way you love and admire each other and spending time just seeing how much you care and support the other one is really uncommon these days. And then, Kirk went to lunch with Kyle, and what did they end up talking about? So much about their relationships and what they care about. And he's like, I can't wait for you to meet Natasha. You're going to love her. And I heard so many amazing things.
I don't even know her yet, but you're going to love her.
I first heard JP on the Ben Greenfield show. And when it comes to that, like, I didn't know you were a Facebook sensation, and I didn't know that you were also really funny. So when I heard you you were talking about all the key points that his listener base, including myself, want to hear about: keto, all this different stuff. But it was in a way that was, it was a mockery of the whole thing. And it was so hilarious. You're talking about having more butter in your coffee than actual coffee. That's how keto you are. Things like that, like to illustrate the absurdity of it. But now you guys are here. You're blowing up as a comedian, and you're getting ready to start your podcast.
Yeah, man.
What is the podcast going to be about?
It's going to be about purposefulness and playfulness. I think being on purpose and being playful are like two sides of the same coin. But I think to live an awakened life, which for me means living a life where we feel fulfilled, I think we got to have more purposefulness and playfulness. And I find a lot of people get connected to their purpose when they're being playful. So long story short, what I'll be doing on my upcoming show is being myself with people. Like, we're going to talk about some sincere shit, and we're going to have a good time doing it. So, I'll be bringing on guests. Kyle, love to have you on. Everybody at this table want to have y'all on eventually. And yeah, we'll be having meaningful conversations, and I'll probably fly off on some purposeful pointlessness rambles myself here and there. So, but I will say this, Kyle, as I get a little pretentious in this therapy session talking about myself, as I've been doing comedy on videos and on stage and other kind of work, there's a part of me that needed expression that hasn't been accessed via the comedy that I've been doing or shows. And I've had this craving for over a year and a half to do my own podcast. And I've had a chance to be a guest on hundreds of podcasts. And it's awesome. And I was just craving, like, I need to do this for myself. And finally, the time on my schedule was created. So yeah, man, I'm pumped. Mm-hmm. Playfulness and purposefulness.
You should have me on, because my purpose is to play.
I already told you, Kirk, I'd have you on. And if you knew how to listen, you would know that.
I was playing. I wasn't paying attention. Sorry.
I think the first time I was aware of you was when we stayed at Aubrey's guest house, the Fletcher house, and he has your book on the nightstand next to the bed, the master bed. Mm-hmm. That was the first time I was aware. I was like, I thought it was a serious book. And I was like, what was it? The spiritual...
How to be ultra spiritual.
How to be ultra spiritual.
Yeah, and you got like 12, a flower
12 and a half steps to spiritual superiority.
That was the first time I became aware of you. And then when I looked you up, because I was like, I think he's a comedian. I'm pretty sure he's a comedian. I think it's all like a joke.
Yeah,
Mostly,
that
but-
actually is a serious book, Natasha. How dare you take it as a joke?
Poured his soul out.
You've dishonored me in front of my wife, Amber. Natasha.
It's hilarious. I love.
But yeah,
I love all
actually, the
your-
first time I stayed in that house, I left that book there. I was in town doing a book signing. I don't know when it was, 1.5 years ago, and this house needs my book. So.
Yeah, no, it's great placement for it. And then I think I fell in love with you when I saw your videos of you sneak attacking people.
Oh, that was the best. Yeah,
That
you
is
did
my
at
favorite
Onnit.
thing, the rear naked choke. I do
Yeah.
that to Kyle constantly. It's like my lot in life is how many times I can sneak attack him. And when we have actual guests and people come stay at our house or eat dinner, it's something I like to do is rear naked choke everybody.
I love that. And I actually got to sneak attack rear naked choke Kyle in that video, the jujitsu sneak attack video.
He's
and
pretty easy.
he's
pretty easy to get.
I took him down, man.
I think he dropped down from the pull-up bar on top of one into a triangle choke.
And I'll tell you, during that video, Amber and I, before we moved here, we came to town, we were filming that video, and I actually cracked a rib doing the final scene of the videos. So that jujitsu class you were taking part of, were dropped in, and you let us do a scene with you. There was a girl in the class, or a woman, hashtag me too, don't want to get in trouble. The crew said, would you mind taking 2 minutes being this scene? You just throw JP down, stomp on his chest. She's like, cool. So we did a take and it was good. Then we did another take. And as soon as she stomped on my chest, it was a loud crack. And instantly she was horrified. And it was... Man, it was too painful to actually use in the video. We had to use the scene before because instantly she reacted. And that was my first and only intro into jujitsu. And I had a career-ending injury 2 minutes into my career.
Well, you should have told her you had osteoporosis before you did the shot.
I know.
That's not fair.
Yeah, and I'm still suing her as well. Kyle, in your fighting career, have you had an injury nearly that severe?
Close, actually, just on the ribs.
Oh my
I
goodness.
don't think we have cameras focused on it, but I had a separated rib.
Is that what
Makes
Chael
snuggle
Sonnen
time
has?
real
Is that what
fun.
his?
A lot of people have that.
Okay.
Yeah, it popped out 8 days before a fight, and I had a chiropractor slide it back in. Every time I sneezed, it would go out.
Wow.
Brutal. And then still
So
had to
painful.
fight thanks to the amount of money we make in the UFC. I couldn't take that fight off. And
Did you have a
it
chiropractor
got
in your
kicked.
corner putting you?
No, but it got kicked in the second round, and it just stayed that way. So it's permanently repositioned itself with a nice little button on the end for me.
So in other words,
That was the worst injury I've ever had in
So you've
fighting.
never had one close to what I encountered?
No, not even close.
He also can't feel the left side of his chin. So like if you ever eat out with him, most of the time there's like a massive amount of food here and he has no clue. So you can literally not say anything and he'll walk out with all that food all
Special
over.
sauce.
He had a giant green leaf recently.
Piece of relish.
And it took everything in me.
Yeah, I had a head of cabbage on my
Top
lower
yeah.
left chin.
Yeah.
There's a steel plate there, so I can't.
Oh, wow.
It's over the nerve.
Jeez.
I love the picture you have on social media where essentially your whole face is a black eye.
Oh, yeah.
Like your eye swollen shut and your forehead swollen out a couple of inches, your cheeks.
Yeah, it was
mean,
bad.
Were you on Coumadin or something? Like some blood thinners? They're like, how did you get to that? I'm like, was that like in a UFC fight or?
Yeah, that happened
Orbital fracture.
first in Vegas with Fabio Maldonado, orbital blowout left side, and then again a couple years later in Nottingham, England. Same
Really
left
all of
orbital
our
blowout, left eyebrow
photos.
fracture too.
Yeah.
Jeez.
From a head kick, I chose to block with my head, which was a
That's
good
technique.
good
I mean, your
decision.
head looks like it would be really rugged.
Yeah, hard to knock out.
Yeah.
And Amber,
Yes.
I've heard so much about you. I've met you at the Influencer Summit. Is that what it was? The
Yeah.
Influencer
Yes.
Summit, right?
That was a fun
And
weekend.
we got to hang at Aussie's
yes.
where they had
so
the
fun.
volleyball courts going and everything. And
Yeah.
a couple other influencers were being a little creepers, but we won't name names. Yeah, funny event. And you are a yoga instructor.
Yes.
And you guys also do ayahuasca retreats. Is that correct?
I do, yeah. So a huge part of my work are I produce shamanic yoga retreats and also yoga teacher training programs that incorporate ayahuasca ceremonies. Yeah, so a huge part of my path. I moved to Costa Rica 5 years ago, and I was there full time for the last 5 years until I met JP, and we decided to move to Austin. So yeah, it's a huge part of my path, my healing and own personal transformation, and then helping others work with this medicine. So I don't serve medicine. I work with shaman who are amazing and, very experienced in this work, but I facilitate the experience and create the container for people to really go deep with that medicine.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the future of branching in the Western mind of, I'm going to do this medicine and this work, and then I'm just going to go straight back to fucking work.
Yes.
And there's no like real integration period. And now you see with places like your practice and Rhythmia, it's also in Costa Rica, there's breath work, there's yoga, there's days off. You're not allowed to leave right when you finish.
Yeah.
I think that's critical because there's a lot of places you can go stateside for that. And it can be a beautiful experience, but inevitably it's one night and you have a day off and then you're right back to the grind.
Yeah.
It's
or
not quite
3
the
nights
same.
in a row and then you leave for the next day. In our case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple of our best experiences have been stateside 3 nights in a row.
Oh, wow.
But it has to be that there has to be some period of
totally
time off. It can't be, let me just go back to the regular, whatever real life, fake life I've manifested for myself and try to, just put all this into practice.
It's probably true for all sorts of integration, any type of integration of self-work. And Krisstina has a very powerful story about that. It might be a little too much for this, but basically she went through some pretty deep self-work. And then what they told you at the end about changing your environment, and you want to tell that story?
No.
A little bit about it?
She's like, no. But yeah.
No, but basically they said, hey, you've done all this great work and you've changed a lot, but if you go back to your old environment, you're just going to become your old self again. And you're just going to be, was it crabs or lobster? Like if you...
Yeah, it's if you have
the bucket,
a container of crabs, if one crab is trying to escape and pull its way out, the other crabs will pull it down. And so ultimately they all end up dying. And that was, to his point, is that I spent 60 days on what I call a very self-growth, spiritual growth journey against my will. And after a full-on breakdown. But that was a big part of coming out, is that after 60 days, they spent several days with me and said, here's the thing, you've had a complete transformational experience. You are a different person. Mm-hmm. And when you go back home, everybody's going to think you're just a fixed version of who you were, but you're totally different. And so if you go back and you don't actually integrate and take the time and do the work, the real work is at home. Mm-hmm. This is just the beginning. So if you go back right to where you were, you're just going to be that again. And so I took that very seriously and completely radically changed my life, because that life didn't work very well for me. So yeah, and it was difficult, because how do you go back to the real world and not go fully into that same experience? Because you have to make hard decisions. Some relationships need to end, environments need to change, conversations need to change. And that force is really powerful, especially when you have big egos attached to it and lots of success and identity, and people identify you as that certain person and solve certain problems. And if you're not that anymore, what the hell do you do? Like, who are you? Right.
Yeah, I think whether it's plant medicine ceremony or more of a traditional style self-growth retreat, I think those are all metaphoric rebirths that we all go to because we're looking to have something new born into our lives. And I think those experiences are nothing but momentum. And I don't mean to trivialize them like nothing but momentum. They're amazing, but they're momentum nonetheless. And if you go right back into your previous environment, the momentum drives you deeper there. But if you recalibrate and shift 25 degrees in the direction that you want your trajectory to be in, then that momentum can take you there. And that might mean, just like you said, you don't hang out with certain friends anymore. And maybe they were never friends, or maybe you hang out with these new people, or maybe you have a new routine because it's a new life. And of course, I think change is always uncomfortable. If it's comfortable, it's not actually real change. It's just the same thing disguised as change. So I think the hard part, the meaningful part, the rewarding part is allowing the integration and the change to happen in our day-to-day lives.
And it's very uncomfortable because who we were or what we were doing, it's when you're not that anymore, then it's really facing, okay, who am I? What am I doing next? And if it's not that, what is it? And it's not like you get this big epiphany and it's so obvious what's next. It's like, holy cow. And that's really where the work is. And it's so uncomfortable and very scary. And it takes a lot of faith. It's like, all right, I don't have the answers, but I'm just going to keep moving forward one day at a time and keep just doing the work and doing the work and doing the work.
Mm-hmm. Well, to your point, I mean, I think all change is that way. And you said something, you didn't really introduce yourself as a money coach, what you do, but you said something on your coaching call yesterday I've never heard you say before so it's an 8-week course. And she said, during this 8-week course, you're going to learn a lot of stuff about how to manage your money and how to grow your money, how to get out of debt and all this other stuff. But all you need to do is learn the first 8 weeks. And then the work starts after that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what the retreats do, right? It's like they show you, like you get an education, like a really quick education in the plant medicine, like, hey, this is what you need to work on. Mm-hmm. But all they did was show you, here's the work you're going to do now. And if you don't go do the work, then you just wasted your time.
And what's the purpose of that? Of, let's say, having an ayahuasca retreat and getting some big epiphanies and realizations and like what I call holy shit moments, like, holy shit. If you're not going to go do something with that, to go right back to what we were means that was really just a wasted experience or just to say you've done that. And I'm sure, Amber, you see that all the time.
I do. I see it a lot. People in the medicine community, they end up sitting pretty consistently and they end up getting the same lessons over and over and over again. And it's like, she's still telling you the same thing. You need to eat cleaner and take care of your body and go work out every day. Like really simple self-care rituals, right? That are often what's coming through for people. But until they really master that, they're not going to be able to get, let's say, the next bigger lesson. And so I've seen that in people, specifically in Costa Rica. We have a really strong medicine community there. It's just part of the lifestyle down there. And so people are really sitting consistently like I was, once, twice a month, very consistently. But it's what you do with it. And so it's how it changes how you are in the world. That's what matters. And how you speak to people, how you show up for yourself and for your partners and the work you do in the world. So if you're not taking those lessons, then it's like, what's the point? It's a cool experience, but there's really no takeaway.
Yeah. We call it the homework. Yeah. We don't go and do more ceremonies unless we've done the homework from the last one that we did.
A great way to put
awesome.
it.
Yeah.
That came from personal fuck up. I went 3 ceremonies in a row, 1 a month for 3 months straight, and it kept telling me to meditate and do yoga.
Right.
And that's not everyone's message or medicine, but that was mine for certain. And on the 3rd ceremony, I was like, what the fuck? Wow. I already know this. You've been telling me this for 3 months.
Why is she accidentally still telling me the same thing?
Why won't you tell me something else?
She must be
like, oh, you haven't started to do this. And it's like being held back a grade. You don't get to graduate and move on to the new lessons. Yeah. I'm going to keep you stuck in the 7th grade until you start doing the work.
You keep failing the test.
Exactly.
And I think the scary part, but also exciting part of the reintegration with new growth, new trajectory is there's a thankless part to it where what we're called to do with integrating something new into our lives, nobody else knows about that. Like our family, our friends, like they don't receive a download of consciousness saying, oh, here's Amber and this is what she's supposed to be. They don't know. So I think there's like a certain like hero on his or her like solo adventure. Now, granted, I think the right support system, the like-minded, more importantly, like-hearted friends who can relate in their own way, like, yeah, bro, I've been there, done that. And, here's my version of that. So they can relate to it, but they can't know exactly what your journey is because it's an inward journey and change on the external might be called for. So yeah, I just find it fascinating, scary, and exciting, that solo part of the adventure.
Yeah, step into so many parallels between that world, the medicine world, and whatever this world that we're in right now is.
Yeah.
Real or not real, the dream, whatever people call it, right? but there's a certain level of not knowing, like, and then stepping into that willingly. Like, I'm going to step into the unknown with faith and trust and belief in myself and just see what happens and just follow my instinct and intuition. Yeah. And you have to do that in the plant ceremony, which you don't control. And you have to do that in life, which to a degree we don't control either, right?
Oh, very well said. I think that's one of the most challenging aspects of that integration process is like that just full trust and surrender, which is what ayahuasca very much teaches us. But it's so hard when you're in that upheaval of like, oh my gosh, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't want this old life. So, okay, now I'm totally open to all possibilities, but it's terrifying. So in that moment, it's all about trust and surrender, just being guided by something higher than yourself to,
And that's really the big problem working with SEALs. So, a lot of SEALs, when they retire, I mean, they're top of what they do, right? I mean, I guess Green Berets and so forth can argue Delta Force and all that, but they're top 1/10 of 1% of what they do. Like and then they do that for 25 years. They've had 15 surgeries and 3,000 head injuries and whatever. They have their community. I mean, when you're in the SEAL teams, like your platoon is your family. It's like you're around those people 24/7. I mean, you're sleeping right next door to each other and working all day together, going out at night together, unless you're home, which is like 20% of the time. But then these guys get out of the military after being, a high-ranking, high-achieving SEAL, and now who are they? Like they're just like, I don't know, and they're damaged, right? And they're having a really hard time remembering where they left their car keys and their wallet and where they parked their car. And there's a lot of self-doubt now about whether I can go on and be a high achiever again. But they're not people who will be satisfied just not being high achievers. And that's a really difficult thing when you lose yourself. And I've done it since we've been together, just like completely look at who I am. Like, oh my God, like for me, it was a choice, right? Like I didn't even like that guy. I didn't know that's who I was. And I don't want to be that guy. But these guys, like, it's not really their choice. It's like they're nearly 50 years old. They can't really do the SEAL job anymore. They have to go on and do something else. And they don't know who they are. And it was kind of thrust upon them. And, I have had some pretty big, like amazing life-saving successes with the plant medicines to help these guys when everything else fails. They've been in 5 years of Western care with, taking 13 different drugs, and they don't even know what's making them feel bad now because they're taking so many things. And they just cut all that off and go do, ayahuasca or ibogaine or something like that. And they actually see it. And then the ones who come back and do the work, I mean, you don't even recognize them. I mean, literally, you don't recognize them. One of the guys actually I want to talk to you about after the show. He was my first patient. He's the guy who got me interested in plant medicine. So I was, maybe 7-8 years out of medical school, still very much traditional medicine. I mean, I was doing little things. I was doing sort of some naturopathic type things, just because there's a lot of limitations to what you can give people in the military and not disqualify them from their jobs. So I had to find some creative ways to help guys without drugs. But being a doctor, all I knew was, I knew how to recognize disease, identify it, and treat it with the way the reference book told me to treat it, which this drug first, then that drug or procedure or whatever. And these guys are coming to me with these just really dark lives, and they didn't meet disease, and none of them had disease. But the darkest guy, I mean, this literally, I've told Krisstina this a dozen times. I was afraid of him. Like when he came in my office and sat down, like every time I was like, murder, suicide today. Like today's the day. Like,
Whoa.
Like he was dark and scary. And we, and I don't even think I've told him that. So,
find out
here. You hear this on the podcast. Let me explain more.
Patient was Kyle Kingsbury.
He I worked with him for about 1.5 years before he got out, and he wasn't really any better, maybe marginally better. Still really dark. And then I saw him at this fundraiser maybe 9 months later. He sat across from me as close as you are. And he comes up and he sits down. And this is a fundraiser we have for the SEAL Family Foundation every year. And I'm terrible with names and faces. I'm terrible at remembering people. And so people always come up to me and talk to me, and I'm spending like half the time figuring out how I know this guy. So he comes and sits this far apart from me, and he's talking to me, and I'm just like acting like I know him. I'm like, who is this? And we keep talking and talking and talking. And then all of a sudden he says something. And I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, yeah, who'd you think I was? I don't know. But he was so different. I literally couldn't recognize. And this is a guy I'd spent, 50 hours with in my office and, seeing around the teams. And he's not just somebody I've blown past a few times. This is a guy I know well and totally different. But he went down to Peru and lived with a shaman in the jungles for 30 days and nude and doing all the fasting and ayahuasca and Kundalini yoga. And he came out of it like a completely different person. And he's kept doing the work, and he's still that transformed guy. It's pretty amazing.
I'm curious with, outside of the plant medicine breakthrough he had, but, you being a former SEAL, Kirk, and working with a lot of those guys, I kind of look at that as like a metaphoric representation that anybody can relate to, because here's a SEAL, which is like, you're great, but you can't be a SEAL forever. So you essentially, eventually, just to rhyme words, Dr. Dre hashtag, you eventually have to betray that identity as a SEAL, betray the great in order to go to your greaterness, the what's next on your journey. So yeah, I guess I'm curious, with your work with the SEALs, what else do you see works for those guys so they can essentially betray their old identity so they can grow into who they're becoming?
Yeah. Well, the good thing about the SEAL teams is, you learn a lot. They're very, very capable people. They can do just about any job. What they really need is their own self-confidence back. So, but they're all like, the guys that retire are very, very damaged. The New England Journal of Medicine published an article in 2009 that showed the acceleration changes on a roller coaster are enough to cause a mild brain injury, what we call an MTBI. And shooting machine guns in a concrete room is 35 Gs. The acceleration changes on a roller coaster was 1.2 Gs that caused the rupture. So how many head injuries do these guys have? Wow. They have these uniquely inflamed brains. They're not the same as the NFL. They've done autopsies. There's a suicide crisis in ex-SEALs as well. And a few of them have now shot themselves in the chest, and they've gotten autopsies of their brains, and it's graphically different, categorically different than what the NFL, they're seeing in the NFL. But it's just as bad, it's probably worse. So getting guys through that is really the key. So one thing is, the biggest thing is really just is teaching vulnerability. These are not vulnerable people. And that's what I think the plant medicine is good at breaking through. And then if you can keep that momentum and get them to be vulnerable in other environments and without, plant medicine necessarily. And then as they work on that, all the modalities that will decrease brain inflammation and increase the brain function. So like, the VAR-IR sauna and hyperbarics and ketogenic diet, like all those types of things that will accelerate your mitochondrial growth and decrease inflammation in your brain. Once they kind of get their brain function back, and I'm not exaggerating, what they would tell me is when they'd come in my office and tell me what's really going on, which they usually don't do. They only did it because I was a SEAL, because other doctors will put them on the bench essentially, right? And they'd come and tell me what's really going on. And I'd tell them the story. I found out that sleep, or they tell me their story, and I found that sleep was a really big component of it, because they were all using sleep drugs, which is why I invented sort of the sleep supplement. I invented it with them. I'm like, hey, try this and try this. And so they helped me figure out what combination, because you can't just take away their Ambien and say, suck it up, buttercup, right? And you have to give them something in place of that. So sleep, just getting them to sleep decreased a ton of inflammation and enhanced a lot of cognitive functioning, because that's when your brain's pruning and that's when your brain's growing and durable tracts are forming. And then all those adjunct, the one guy I was talking about who went to the Amazon, rolfing is a big part for him. A lot of people, acupuncture is a big part for them. The sensory deprivation, the float chambers, like that's a big part for certain guys. There's a guy up in Washington State that does these really intricate IVs with peptides and vitamins and nutrients and all this stuff, and that seems to help guys. And like I said, the hyperbarics and all that. And then once you get them to where they're not doubting themselves all the time, because you just imagine every time you leave your house, you go get in your car, you start your car. If you've remembered your keys, you start your car, and then you go, oh, I forgot this. And you get out of your car and you go back and you get it and you get back in your car and you get down and oh, I forgot this. And 5 times, that was their average, 5 times.
Wow.
Before they could leave their house to go to work.
Wow.
But when they're in their community, everybody's just like them. So they're compensating all in the same way, and it's all normal behavior. And then when you get out, now you're going to go to corporate America or something, or you're going to go be an entrepreneur or something. Like, how can you be an entrepreneur if you can't remember the phone call you just had 2 minutes ago, or why you walked into the room and all that? So it's really a lot about getting their health back and getting them to be vulnerable. And they'll be vulnerable with each other, right? Like within the group, and the male joking sort of way, they'll sort of ask for help and they'll get help. But once they get out of that community, they don't really trust people. So that vulnerability.
There's the different parts of it too. So I know, like with my own experience, when I nearly died physically, there's the physical breakdown. So I had to repair my brain, repair my body in order to save my life. And that was one piece of it. But as that was healing, my mind was broken also. And so it was both of these at the same time. And it's kind of breaking down the psychology and dealing with all the trauma and dealing with all those issues separate from the brain, from the physical piece that's just as damaged. And a big part of that, and what we've even seen with some of the SEALs, is that, being with Kirk, they'll come talk to me a little bit just as a business owner and entrepreneur. And they're coming to me and they're now retired and they don't know who they are, because their entire identity, this powerful thing called an identity, like the way the world sees us, and we identify the way with people see us. That's who we are, is how other people think we are.
Yes.
So if we're not that anymore, then what are we? And that is the difficult piece, is answering that question. Like, if I'm not that identity, I'm a nobody in this case. And that's what they feel. So they'll come and they'll say things like, I don't know what to do, and I have no value in the world. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You have no value. You were a SEAL. I mean, the team, like what you have to do with teams and the decision-making and real life and death situations. And I mean, all the character and the courage and the psychological fortitude and the decision-making and everything they do. And they go into war and they save lives. I mean, in business, we're just playing with, we act like this is life and death. That's bullshit. There's no life and death. We're just making shit up every single day and then taking credit for it. I'm like, no, you have everything. Like in business, you have every characteristic, every attribute, everything that we would want. Like you can fit anywhere. Just the specific knowledge here and there is irrelevant. But they actually come and they think that they're valueless now. Wow. So they can't identify with like, who am I? And I think, in context of what we're just talking about before, that is so much if we get so attached to these identities of who the world thinks we are. And if we have to reinvent those, to your point, like to reinvent is this rebirth, that's what's so scary. And that's what is the vulnerability is, holy cow, like, who am I? What do I do if I'm not that? What am I? And that's where so much of the work is.
Yeah, I think the biohack not to be bypassed is vulnerability. I mean, there's nothing sexy about it. It sucks to do. For me, it sucks to do short term. Long term, it's so rewarding, but it's like it hurts more now so that I can have more pleasure, then over the course of the medium term, long term. And to me, hearing what y'all are saying, it seems like vulnerability is an alchemist that softens the shell of who one was so they can pierce that membrane, that hard shell of I was a SEAL or I was this person, whoever we used to think we were. That softens so we can pierce that birth canal into what's on the other side. And I think it's scary as hell.
I think you said it a few minutes ago. The whole idea of confusing what you do with who you are. And so many people do that. And I've been guilty of that many, many times in my life as well, too. And the irony is now I would have a really hard time telling you what I do. If somebody comes up and says, "What do you do?" I'm like, I don't know.
How do I
How long do you
box
have?
myself right now?
I need a whiteboard. Like, what do you do? I don't know. But for the first time in my life, I know who I am.
Yeah.
Right. Like for the first time, I'm like, oh, I know exactly who I am. So it doesn't matter what I do. But all the rest of my life, I was trying to be what I did. I was, an athlete in high school, and then I was a SEAL, and then I was a medical student, and then I was a doctor, and then I was a doctor to the SEALs, and then I was, a doctor in private practice, and I was a concierge doctor, and then I left and I became an entrepreneur, and then I was all wrapped up in entrepreneurship, and that's still what I do to make money, but I don't really know. I don't really have a master plan for it. I'm just kind of like fumbling around to figure out exactly what the path is. But for the first time in my life, like I know exactly who I am, and I'm not a SEAL. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor to the SEALs. Like those are all things I do, but or have done. But that's not who I am at all.
Yeah, I kind of got that realization. I had an injury in 2012, so it forced relaxation, forced press pause on life, and took some time off from fighting. Was also introduced to ayahuasca in that same period. And my identity as a fighter was just shattered. Like there is that I don't, that's something I do. It's something I love and appreciate, but it's not who I am. And then also in that same period, over time, there was this lack of importance with the thing I was doing, which is kind of necessary if you want to keep fighting. That's the most important thing in your mind.
Yeah.
So that made it for an easy shift to leave, but definitely was much easier for me to grasp that concept of, I'm not that thing, and I'm not exactly certain what I am, but I don't need to know. I don't need to have labels for that. I don't need to have this cool cookie cutter emblem that I can shine and show to the world. Look at me. This is what I do.
Yeah, I just am. Like all those things. Yeah, I've done those things, and I know some things, but that's not who I am. It's things I know. It's things I've done. I am who. Like Popeye, the original poet and philosopher. I am what I am. I mean,
and I think that's part of the wisdom of the unknown. Like I think there's so much grace and power in being able to say, I don't know. Like, and it's okay. I think that evokes us into a curious mindset and heart set rather than the mindset of certainty. Like, oh yeah, this is who I am. And I am the fighter. I am the redhead. Like I'm the bald dude. And I think our sense of certainty about who we are has zero correlation to who we really are. I think it just has a high correlation to how we anesthetize the fear of how we don't actually know ourselves. Yet the wisdom of the unknown, when we actually ease into it and surrender into it, like, yeah, I don't know who I am. I'm figuring it out, and I'll probably never have it figured out. It's probably not a figuring out thing. It's probably more of a experiential thing that this beady little intellect can't comprehend. So that's what I'm doing. It's clumsy, but it's also awesome when I can relax into it and breathe with it rather than fighting reality.
Yeah. And one of our mentors that one of our coaches, our life coaches, said just such a great thing. He said, if we're not embarrassed by who we were a year ago, then we're not growing fast enough.
Yeah.
If we're not embarrassed by who we were yesterday, we're not growing fast enough. And it just gives so much freedom. Like we're always becoming, and who I was yesterday doesn't mean that's who I am today. And it just gives the freedom to constantly grow and explore and become someone different. And there's no finish line.
I love that. What's it mean when I'm embarrassed by who Kirk is today?
That's empathy, which proves you've been here. And it also proves that there's something, you have senses beyond your body, which is pretty amazing.
Please address me as Dr. JP.
I will.
Kirk.
You didn't go to 4 years of evil doctor school.
You took the doctor from Kirk and applied it to yourself.
Yeah, it's not who he is. It's who I am.
And I'm a redhead. I'm a ginger.
Yeah, you'll embody that. Address you as Ginger from now on. Is
I
that
should
right?
have been a redhead. Both my parents are gingers.
My mother's a
Missed
ginger.
out. It's beautiful. I like it.
I have no other gingers in my family.
You're the lucky one.
Kyle is literally just ginger right here. the middle part of the chin when his beard grows out. It's ginger.
So has anyone told you you're adopted yet? Or
well, my parents,
hedging on that?
Based on what my parents, who look nothing like me, never told me, I'm definitely not adopted.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Babe, I know by babe, I mean Amber, if y'all are listening to this auditorily.
Oh, I thought it was me.
Or telepathically for the enlightened conscious.
For the really super conscious.
If you sense anesthesia and you're listening to it visually.
It's something that I see so many people can relate to about your story is, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if I was pretending to, it'd sound like you seem like you were very self-identified as like the hustler living in San Francisco for years, burning yourself out, but you were willing to die in the name of who you thought you were for a while.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. I was a professional dancer I started dance when I was 3 years old.
Non-stripper.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. That's the first comment I get oftentimes. Oh, what type of dancer? I'm like,
first thing I told my parents, she wasn't a stripper.
Not that there's anything wrong with strippers.
No, there's everything right with them.
So my parents put me in ballet when I was 3 and I danced my whole life competitively and then went to college for dance and then also went on to dance professionally in San Francisco for 8 years. And so my identity, speaking of identity, was dance. Dance was my life. Just like, fighting is for so many people, right? We have this identity. And I was also an entrepreneur and I was hustling super hard in San Francisco and trying to just grow as quickly as possible, but became very self-destructive. And in my early 20s, I suffered from severe bulimia. And it really was my rock bottom of, wow, I cannot keep living this lifestyle. And that's one of the things that really propelled me to move to Costa Rica was I went on a trip to Costa Rica to teach at the Envision Festival. I was invited to teach there and I actually almost didn't go, but I'm so grateful I did. And I went down for 2 weeks and I saw a completely different way of living, a more holistic, peaceful, connected way of living in the jungle with amazing friends and tribe. And I saw, wow, I am so out of balance. It's mind blowing. And so when I made the decision to move to Costa Rica, it was very much an intuitive, heartfelt calling. It was my soul saying, you need this, Amber, whether you know it or not. And so I didn't know why I was moving to Costa Rica, but I made the leap anyway. And I left my entire identity as a dancer. I left my entire private client base there. I was teaching Pilates, yoga, nutrition full-time to private clients. And I left all of that there to pursue a totally different way of living because I needed a different environment. Speaking of environment, right? I needed a much more nourishing environment in a different culture that valued different things. Because the U.S., as you guys all know, has certain paradigms, certain value systems, and moving to a country where they value connection and connection to nature, connection to people. They don't value material possessions. They value community. And being present and enjoying life. They embody pura vida. They just
Pura
get
vida.
it, And I was like, I want what they have. They're so happy with nothing compared to, let's say, Americans in terms of our material wealth and being like, wow, these people get it. And I want to know what that feels like to really live that way. And so, it was so challenging that first 6 months to a year because I'm this type A perfectionist, hard ass entrepreneur. And I drop into in the jungle and it's super slow and the internet's dial up speed and just trying to run a business there and realizing, oh, wow, this doesn't function the way I'm used to coming from Tech City. And then within the first 6 months, I found ayahuasca and I realized, oh, maybe this is why I'm being called here. And so then my whole journey with ayahuasca has taken off and it's become a huge part of my purpose. But if you told me 5 years ago, Amber, you're going to be creating shamanic yoga retreats in the jungle in Costa Rica, I'd say you're crazy, absolutely crazy. So I just really believe that there's we have to continually, I think what helps me is reminding myself that we are always consciously evolving. There's always something new coming on the horizon, but we just have to be open to it and listen to our hearts.
Compost thyself, let who we were become the dead, rotten material that feeds who we are today, who we're becoming beyond what we were. And I think I love your story, babe. I love being inspired by my wife.
Oh,
the composting thing explains a lot about the way you smell. So isn't bulimia a prerequisite for being a dancer? I mean,
Blaming.
bulimia.
Oh, bulimia.
Yeah, I mean, it's like really prevalent. And
It's super prevalent, just like in the modeling world. Yeah. So anorexia and bulimia are super, super prevalent. And I remember being a young teenager, like 16, and saying, I'll never have an eating disorder. I'll never let someone get to me that way. Like, but the reality is it caught up to me. It caught up to me, the pressure of looking a certain way, because you're being judged constantly by your physique and by your soul's expression. Dance is so much the language of the soul. So when someone's judging you on that and they're they're cutting you from this piece of choreography, or you're not accepted here or there, like you grow a thick skin, but it's definitely affecting you. So one of the lessons I learned through my work with ayahuasca was I need to feel my emotions, because I did not let myself feel any of that judgment and that criticism over the years. And that's what manifested that's what created the eating disorder and all the self-destructive thoughts and behaviors, was this inability to feel my feelings and actually release them and move them, I think.
Even though you didn't offer, I'm thinking I really want to get you to talk to my daughter, who's almost 16, wants to be a dancer, wants to move to New York City and be a dancer. And she's been dancing probably since 4 or 5 years old as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So you're on the hook for that.
I'm happy to help.
And that's just part of knowing me, because I'm just going to
volunteer you for
assume that you want to help me.
I do. I want to help all women. I think, most women deal with some level of eating disorder in their teens, early 20s into, I think it's a massive issue that no one talks about. And that's why I really love sharing my story, because I want women to know that there's a way to escape it, because it is a prison that you create for yourself. And there's a way to rewire the mind, to heal your heart, and to really live in a way where you don't even have any of those thoughts anymore. They don't even exist anymore. And the self-worth, the self-love that you can actually embody is real. But for so many women, they've never experienced that in their lives. They don't know what it's like to love themselves. They don't know what it's like to look in the mirror and say, I'm pretty, because they've never experienced it.
Most men don't either. And what people don't realize is that bulimia in men is very common as well, especially in high achievers. They don't purge, they exercise. So it's exercise bulimia. So they ate that donut they wanted, and now I got to go run 10 miles today to burn that donut off.
Okay.
And so, and it's a compulsive reason if you just run 10 miles because you like running 10 miles, then that's one thing. But if you're doing it out of this obsessive need that you're like, I have to get rid of the evil I've done to my body and like purge my soul to the aesthetic gods or whatever. So I have to go run all this off.
I've seen a lot of posts where people talk like that, like, I do this so that I can eat these foods or live this way. And
so I can eat anything I want. I work out 7 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's maybe a more
one wrong answer.
Maybe more socially acceptable eating disorder, but still a disorder.
Yeah, totally.
And Kirk, I want to help you too.
Yeah. I'm ready.
Kyle is telepathically asking me to tell your lower self some parenting advice.
Okay. Yes. Don't talk about your kids on the radio on podcast.
No. Just be vulnerable and listen, Kirk.
Okay. I'll try.
Put your shell down.
I'm trying.
Just breathe.
Put my shield down.
What Kyle's higher self wants my higher self to tell my lower self to tell your lower self to tell your higher self is to tell your daughter that if you don't succeed at a very high level as a dancer in New York, then I'll stop loving you.
Absolutely. I've already been telling her that her whole life.
Great.
My kids know that their achievements are like they're little coins.
Yeah.
You just like putting a quarter in dad's love machine. Every time. Every time you one success, you get a quarter. How long it lasts depends,
For sure. I think the biggest what's wrong with America today is some parents out there love their children for who they are.
Yeah.
Not what they do.
Ridiculous.
Not what they accomplish. I mean, come on.
I think another aspect, because I also dealt with eating disorders, and I was a distance runner, a very competitive distance runner. So it showed its face in that area of my life. But also from a childhood with a lot of chaos and pain, that was like, it was an idea of this is something I can control.
Exactly.
So like for me, ayahuasca was also something that really healed me and had that feeling of I have to let go. I don't have control, but that healed so much of the feeling of this is control. with eating disorders.
Yeah.
It's a sad one because it's not just dancers. It's just anybody and it's everybody. And especially like when I dealt with anorexia in high school, went to college, dealt with bulimia in college, because there is a shift in the food you're eating, the people you're around. And I feel like that was a huge one in college. You see it in every bathroom.
Yeah.
If you suffer from bulimia, call this hotline. While you're looking you're at the toilet and you're looking up and there's these, they know where to put the poster.
Yeah, right above the toilet.
Where you're looking.
Oh man.
But like, it's sad because it's a lot of women and men suffer from it. And it's this false feeling of control.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
That's what it was for me.
Yeah.
It was my need to control my life because everything else felt completely out of balance and out of control. And I had nothing else to hold on to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, as weird as it sounds, there's a euphoria that follows when you're like, I got rid of it. Now I feel good. Now I feel light. There's a lightness, but it's a similar feeling when you do psychedelics, but there's a healing that comes, a real healing and a real, because of the work, a real purge. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to do ayahuasca because of the reason there was a purge. Even though I'd been bulimic and in college, I was like, I don't want to go puke in the woods. Are you kidding me? But the purge is such a huge part for me now because of the stuff that I work through in that process.
I was just going to mention, Anahata once told me something to keep in mind when you think of whatever substance you're going to use or interaction you're going to have with people or an event you're going to go to is, does this leave me more whole? Right? So like when you compare the purging of an eating disorder versus the purging of ayahuasca, does this leave me more whole? Is this thing that I'm doing going to shape me in a way where I come out of it with a sense of well-being and a lasting peace? Or is it diminishing? Does it hurt me? Does it leave me wanting more or with a sense of lacking?
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting that you bring that up because I get a lot of questions about that. People are like, so you used to be bulimic and now you work with the medicine that makes you purge. How does that, like, isn't it just kind of
course
more of doing the same thing? Like, of course you're attracted to it for that reason. I'm like, the reality is that I often don't purge. It's very rare that I purge with ayahuasca because the medicine's working on me. It's staying in me. I think maybe she knows I've done enough purging, and it's time for me to heal. And so the medicine stays in. So I think it's different for everybody, but I just wanted to point that out.
Most of the time I just shit violently. Yeah. It's pretty much my purge.
I really wanted to purge when I did it. Like I was like, oh man, get this out of me. It's too much, too much. And I couldn't. I mean, I think I told you guys the story at the house. I was literally flipping my epiglottis back and forth with my finger, just going, come on, you can do this. You can do this. And I couldn't. And then I'd get up and I'd go to the bathroom and nothing. I'm like, all right, maybe a little bit later, I'll go lay back down just over and over and over again. So maybe you could teach me how to do that better. Ayahuasca would be a better experience for me.
With the epiglottis, is that like the clitoris of the throat?
Yeah, a lot like that.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's very stimulating.
So it sounds like ayahuasca has changed all of our lives significantly.
Yeah.
Which is wild. And ayahuasca during my ceremony, she called me a fraud.
Wow.
Just big and loud. And that's like the one word, we were talking about that the other night. That's the one thing that she knew where to get me because I'm not a fraud. That's like what I'm trying to be is like transparent and real and vulnerable. And I, in front of my crowds, like I'm just fully there. And so I'm thinking I'm not that. And then she's calling me a fraud. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so, but I was, and I wasn't really willing to admit it. We all have our own stories and justifications and everything in our waking mind and this normal mind. And I mean, Kirk and I are together because of ayahuasca. Is this big realization and just truth that came out. And it's like, okay, I see and know the truth. Now, am I courageous enough to walk into that truth and not be a fraud anymore? So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the really cool things about our stories when you were telling me about how you two got together. And then, I guess yours was a yoga retreat, but we'll pretend like there was ayahuasca.
Well, Amber had just come off a very hardcore ayahuasca Kundalini awakening a day or two before we met. So I can't say whether or not that influenced us.
But
maybe
so as soon as the drugs wear off, you're out.
Much less handsome.
So you better keep her going down there. Keep dosing it up.
Yeah, I put ayahuasca in her coffee every morning.
A little bit.
I keep it going for both of us.
Pocomas.
Well,
we've
you
spoken.
two were psilocybin, right?
Yeah,
That was my first experience ever. I'd never even smoked weed. And he was going for his pre-fight sweat lodge on a Native American reservation.
Oh, cool.
And they would do mushrooms in a Temescal.
Wow.
He's like, I don't know. I mean, I know you've never done anything, but we're going to go do this. You can just go sit and sweat in there if you want, or you can try the mushrooms. And I was like, out of everything, mushrooms for some reason were the one thing that even after hearing only horror stories, it was still this thing that I thought I always had like an interest in. So with all of his, just him, asking about it and him telling me about what the experience would be, and that it was a very spiritual experience. It wasn't just like, we're going to go do drugs and party. I was not into that at all. So I was like, all right, let's try this. And then it ended up being way more than I had,
literally and figuratively. Like I mean, the amount of mushrooms was way more.
And I had no clue. I had no understanding.
I brought an
of
ounce
like gram
for
versus anything.
her, myself, and 3 teammates that are on the fight team, and all 3 of them called me on our hour and a half drive to the reservation. Like, hey, we can't make it tonight. And I was like, oh, no worries. But one by one, they drop out. So we get there, and I present my coach, who's recently passed away, but the first guy that introduced me properly to plant medicines. Okay. And I tell him like, hey, Maestro, I have an ounce of mushrooms. Just give us what we need, and the rest is a gift as a thank you for you. And he said, okay. Oh, and he took two caps out for himself and divided the rest of the bag for the 2 of us.
Oh my God.
So we had to chew these. These weren't ground. We're eating them after he blesses them with sage.
I had no idea. I was just eating a ton of stack of mushrooms. I was like, this seems like a lot of mushrooms, trusting him. Which is a big mistake.
I'm doing the math.
No,
you wouldn't. No,
there's 13
won't
grams.
Be fatal. 13 and a half. They couldn't die.
It was
probably going to die from 13 and a half.
Like I had nothing but just an amazing experience. We sweat. We were like, I was like a waterfall in the Temescal, just like, like dancing. It was all dark. Nobody could see me. And then we came out and it was a full moon, and I just reconnected with Mother Nature, found my inner child, just happiness. There were foxes. There really were foxes running around. Like we were like Disney princesses, and it was just a really magical experience. And then we did ayahuasca. So I kind of,
that was 13 and a half grams of mushrooms. And what's a normal dose?
Well, Terrence McKenna, one of the godfathers of psychedelics and plant medicine, says that 5 grams is a heroic dose. 5 grams.
Okay, so y'all were superheroes.
Yeah,
almost triple that.
Yeah, almost triple.
And she's like 100 pounds. And
perfect. And how did that bond you? I'm so curious, because clearly that was meant to happen in that way with that specific.
Yeah, the container was set too. Yes. The space. There's no running water. There's no casinos or electricity. It is untouched Native American land, and it is in a canyon.
Beautiful.
And with the full moon and my coach's presence, we knew we were safe, so we really could just be in the medicine together. Yeah. And it didn't really matter that it was that level. Like we were blasted off. It would have been a beautiful experience on any level there.
But you two weren't romantic before that, right?
No, we were.
Oh, you were.
Yeah,
okay.
we were dating. Okay. But I also had a really religious, strict childhood. Mm-hmm. And so one of my biggest reasons for not trying anything was like, it's the devil, you're exposing yourself to demons. And so I had a lot of like fear going into it.
She was like, mom was like Kathy Bates in The Water Boy. Mushrooms are the devil, Bobby Boucher.
Why did she call you Bobby Boucher?
She's never seen The Water Boy. She wouldn't even know that reference. But like I remember going into it with still like I didn't call myself a Christian, but I was afraid to to not. I was afraid to say that because then if I said that, then if I was wrong, I was going to hell. But like, it's done nothing but just seal my belief in God but it's not the picture that I grew up believing in. But I remember going into that ceremony praying, like, if it's God from the Bible, like, please protect me from any harm or any demons, or like, I'm doing this in a spiritual way. Like, I want to grow, I want to heal. And it was exactly that. Like, it was nothing but healing and beautiful. It was really our first ayahuasca experience that really bonded us even more, healed a lot of our relationship problems.
Well, look, we've got 20 minutes before you guys have to do Facebook Live, and I want to run this thing right up until we leave because we've got these great guests in the house, and I don't want to waste a moment. We've gone down the rabbit hole on plant medicines, ayahuasca, and psilocybin. For everybody that's listening that has made it this far and is not down to go walk that path, what are the other tools that each of us use to really facilitate growth and understanding and healing, and maybe acceptance of what is, acceptance of whatever the present moment is, whatever life's giving us at that time? How do we navigate the world appropriately and end up being the people that we are today? Outside of plant medicines.
I would love for you to talk about the game. That really became such a big part of, I think, out of ayahuasca, that was your big awareness or realization.
Neil Strauss's book, The Game?
No, it was just a phrase that I used. So, of course, I think that was actually with the benefit of plant medicine that I came up with that metaphor. But, as everything danced around in my head, like all the little components of your life, and you guys know that you've experienced this. People not listening, or people listening who haven't done it, wouldn't understand what I mean. But that rapid fire succession of like everything you think about and everything that you concern yourself with, and whether intentionally or unintentionally, I realized that when I came out of it, I'm like, none of that's real. Like that's the game, right? Like that's the game I play every day. And I use this meat suit to play that game. But like, I am something more than this body, obviously. And I realized that my connection with Krisstina and the love between the two of us, that was the only real thing in my life. That was the only thing that really matters. And everything that surrounds us is the game, like everything. But that takes like it takes an emotional understanding, but a true intellectual understanding is where it starts, is that the love's really unconditional, which means you have to be 100% brutally, painfully honest with each other. And I would say for anybody listening who doesn't want to do plant medicine, just be 100% honest for a month and see where your life is. No bullshit to anybody. You don't even bullshit the meter maid about how long you've been parking. Like nothing. There's no excuse. This isn't situational ethics. Like your rule is no lies, nothing false, nothing misleading. And then if you can say that to your partner, and the partner says, yeah, I love you because of all that. And then all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, she actually knows who I am. Because all of us run around, playing our avatar. We run around playing this role, but we know we're bullshitting. So when we're trying to convince people, you should love me, you should respect me, you should put me on a pedestal, you should value me.
How can I acquiesce to the thing that you like the most about me on paper? Right?
But I know I'm bullshitting. So even if they do love me, I know they don't really love me. They love this facade that I've put up. So the only way they can truly love me is if I just get rid of all the bullshit and say, hey, here, you might not really like this, but this is who I really am. Everything's out on the table. Once you have that unconditional love, like that feeling is just, I literally the first time I've had it in my life. I don't even feel like I have it from my parents. And, my mother was a great mother, but that was just, I didn't, as a kid, I wasn't there. I wasn't there. Like if it was going to disappoint mom, I was going to lie about it. And like, oh no, I don't know how that happened. But with Krisstina and I, like that joining, and she's so vulnerable and honest about her story, and which is worthy, I think, of her own podcast, her journey to be where she is now. well, you do have your own podcast, but I mean a podcast between you two. Once she's so vulnerable and real already that I already knew everything about her. There was no bullshit coming out of her. And once I dropped my shield and all the bullshit, and she truly loved me, and I knew she truly loved me, like that's a sensation you can't describe. Mm-hmm. And that will lift you out of anything. And I would say that'd be my number one intervention. If you don't want to take drugs, just quit lying for the rest of your life.
Be impeccable with your word.
Yeah, be
rule number one,
and
the
just
four
be
agreements.
Exactly, unapologetically who you are. Like, sorry, I know this is going to offend everybody, but this is what I do. And you just offend everybody. Yeah. Then you find your people.
Yes. Yeah, I'll add to that. So a huge part of my work is self-love and building self-care rituals. So a huge part of that for me in my journey, and one of the things I teach now I'm really passionate about, is meditation, yoga, gratitude journaling, a lot of the kind of things you've heard before, but really being consistent in a ritualistic way with these practices, and being willing to do that emotional work is so important, being willing to feel your feelings. And I think that's why meditation and yoga and Pilates and these other mindful forms of movement are so powerful, because they allow us to unlock a lot of emotional trauma and baggage that's held in our physical body, and allows us to feel it and process it and sit with it. And that's really when we can let go of these identities and these belief systems and paradigms that we think are us, but are definitely not. So yeah, I'd say just working in the body. I think embodiment is so important nowadays. Most of us live from the neck up. So really staying connected to our hearts and our bodies and to the earth is as a primary priority, would be my first go-to. Get back into your body, train your body consistently in a balanced way, in a mindful way, get back connected to the earth, daily dose of nature. And just really connecting to your heart through your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. My biggest tip for accelerated growth as a person would, and this even trumps any kind of plant medicines. I mean, to me, my number one tip is make yourself uncomfortable every single day, both physically and psychologically. The physical part's easy. Workout, cold shower, scream, like any of those will create physical discomfort. And then psychologically, say yes to things that scare you that also feel purposeful. And it might be letting go of something that scares you, but there's a sense of simultaneous purpose in that. So to me, that physical and psychological training of embracing discomfort really accelerates us. I think growth and life happens outside of our comfort zone. I think when we're trapped in the familiar coffin of our comfort zone, we're not really living, we're not evolving, we're just recreating what we've already created. And I think the intelligence that courses itself through us is too intelligent to just redo the same metaphoric drawings over and over. It wants to draw something bigger and better with our lives. And we, as the authors that essentially express the words that want to be written through us, we can say yes to that. And if so, there's more grace in our life. We'll be scared shitless sometimes, but there will be a lot more grace. Or we can say no and try to constipate the consciousness that wants to write itself through us. And I think there's hell to pay. Yes. So making ourselves uncomfortable psychologically and physically, to me, is a fucking win.
The discomfort is a laxative.
I think something that kind of ties into that also is unplugging and not having the need to be entertained. That's uncomfortable for a lot of people, especially when you're so tired end of the day. As a mom, I found myself like, God, I'm so tired. I just want to like veg out and watch TV after the baby goes to sleep. But then I find myself over time being unhappy because I'm not reading. Because during the day when I have him, I'm not able to do the things that really make me happy. Yoga, meditation, really emptying my mind, my art, whatever it is. We got rid of our TV for that reason, so that we really wouldn't have the option. The occasional fights that we want to watch, we'll bring the laptop out, but
we bring out the laptop for violence.
For the occasional face smashing, but replacing the need to be entertained with other things that are a lot more like life-giving and just seeing what comes from that, what creativity, what freedom, what peace. Yeah.
Wow, these are all like so right on and so good. And it is like our lives are so busy that there's no white space. It's just going from the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And we keep ourselves numbed by keeping so busy. And we don't create space for white space for, like you're talking about, just to be present, just to feel. And what I would add on to that is that, especially in today's day and age of social media, it's like a new form of bulimia in a way, that it's always the camera and we're always trying to measure up, and our lives are like, my life is as good or better than your life. But it's this, we're like in this time and place where if we're not measuring up and getting external validation and approval from external place, then we're nobody. So everybody feels that their value is based on how many likes they get on Instagram. And that's just a tragedy for what?
Nothing.
I just think it's a travesty and a tragedy in a way that we can't feel good about ourselves. And so my tip is really work to let go of this need for external approval. Like, we're not what other people think. And it's the self-love piece is we just have to love ourselves no matter if we're on Instagram. And that's really hard today because that's what everybody else is doing. So the more we can let go of this need for external approval, this external of measuring up, this external feeling that people think we're good enough to feel good about ourselves, and disconnecting.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. That reminded me of a conversation that I was having with Tate Fletcher when he did the podcast out here. He was so that trip he was out here, we were talking at the event, and he was saying how there's the axiom that you can't truly love someone else until you love yourself. And he said, thank God that's not true, because I wouldn't have anyone to love. And I didn't really make a comment about it. I was a little shocked by it, but the conversation just went on. But then I later thought about it, and the story I was telling, like truly sort of bearing my soul to her. I thought for sure she's gonna be like, yeah, see ya. I'm glad, hopefully that helped you. It was a little cathartic, but you really need to go. I mean, I really. And it was actually her love that allowed me to, and because I love her so much, I'm like, well, if she can love me, then I can love me, right? Like, because, right? And the real me, like, here's everything. Like, she was asking some brutally hard questions, like, oh, I didn't want to go that far down there. Like, it was just,
I wanted to play just the tip. Yeah. Tate brought up some really cool ways to look at things, and that's something. For sure, it's true. You can love other people, but obviously, as you express that love, if you are the best version of yourself, if you truly love yourself and have a belief in yourself, then that's just that much more than you can give to someone else, and really be there and be present and be mindful and not try to attach through your own personal lens what that love should look like or how that person should look to you. Just to really love them for who they are, to learn to love one another the way God loves us, without judgment, without I love you if, I love you and, I love you when, right. Just I love you, you know?
And what we say to each other is, I love you because of all those things, the great, the not so great, but I love you because all of those things have made you who you are, and I love you.
Yeah. And we can look at that to life as well, right? There's so many parallels with the plant medicines, and polarity is one of those things, right? You see the full spectrum. There's no fat without thin. There's no up without down, big and small, tall and thin. All these things, tall and short. There's all these things that are on the same, they're on the same line. They're on the same spectrum. And when you see that, there's appreciation and gratitude for all of it, right? And all the things, the troubles that we go through, the hardships, those stressors and challenges are the things that allow us to grow. And without them, we're stagnant. We stay in the same spot.
And that what Krisstina was talking about was accepting other people's or seeking other people's judgment as to who we are. External validation can only exist on that continuum, right? So you have to be tall or short or fat or thin. You have to for the external to define you. And once you get rid of the external validation, you realize that you don't really have any labels. And I mean, that's what I was saying. Like, I know who I am. I can't describe who I am. Like, I don't have words for it. But for the first time in my life, I really know who I am. And like, I don't know if I'm tall or short or fat or thin. Like, I don't care. Like, it's not something that goes through my head. Without external validation, you're who you've become.
Yeah,
and that moment, and next moment I'm someone else. The next moment I'm growing into someone else. I've had another experience. I've heard another funny joke. I've heard another clever, biohack or, whatever. Like my world's expanded a little bit. And I'm always who I am at that moment. And
I think what that means to me is
schizophrenia.
Yes, and you exist on the relative plane of polarities, but the relative plane of polarity doesn't define your existence.
Right.
It's not all of who you are. It's just a dimension that your existence kind of incarnates into,
right,
amongst all the other simultaneous aspects of your consciousness and dimensionality that you are.
Right.
That sentence didn't really have coherency to it. But
I
picked up what you're putting down.
I smelled what you were stepping in.
I tried to use big words. You used the word acquiesce earlier, Kyle, and I just want to say, well played, good sir. I don't know what it means, but it was so sexy hearing it come out of your mouth.
One of the
Sometimes I laugh when he says big words on the podcast. I don't know.
It always happens after I listen to Tim Ferriss.
Word of the week. I'm going to fit that one in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Acquiesce.
I love it.
What kind of organ is that? Is that by the pancreas?
one of the first text exchanges you and I had, you said something about Krisstina having an abnormal number of S's in her name.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and you have a paucity of letters in your name. And you said, I'm definitely going to pretend like I know what the word paucity means.
Well, shit, I think it's a good place to wrap. We got 3 minutes before Dr. Kirk and Krisstina got to jump on Facebook Live. So where can people find us all on? Obviously, everybody follows JP, so that's not necessary. But let's start with Dr. Kirk. Social media, websites, anything you want to promote.
DocParsley.com is my site. What she'll say, Wealthy Wellthy, is our brand. It's what we're working on. That's more of me than the Doc Parsley.
Two wealthies is more wealthy than one wealthy.
Well, it's wealthy and then the wealthy because it's wealth and health. So it's just a different way of spelling healthy. Is WELLTHY. But I'll let her talk about that. But all of my platforms are around Doc Parsley, so pretty easy to find. Put that in Google.
Mine's easy, Krisstina.com, which is a K and 2 S's, an abnormal number of S's in my name. But as JP
So
put it.
pretentious of you, Krisstina.
I know. Have to be different, right, to stand out. Anyway.
So you guys can
I didn't give him the URL for Wealthy Wellthy.
Oh, well, Krisstina.com goes to Wealthy Wellthy.
Oh.
There you go.
There you go.
Then we don't have to
It's
figure out
easier
the
to
spelling.
spell,
We're going to
exactly.
link to all this in the show notes for people driving their car right now.
Oh.
You guys can find me at epicself.com and same thing on Instagram, Epicself, and Amber Sears on Facebook.
Phenomenal yoga poses. I'm a huge fan.
Oh, thank
I'm a little
you.
creeper. Been following you for a while. Natasha Kingsbury. I'm mostly post stuff with family and kids and all the stuff we're working on with teaching him how to be mindful and do breath work and choking Kyle out. So
Sounds fun.
It's got to be balanced.
yeah.
And JP, in case somebody is living under a rock and doesn't already follow you, where can people find you online?
And I am offended if someone doesn't follow me. It's my inner narcissism. Yeah, I'm Awaken with JP on all social media. And Kyle, thank you for having us, brother.
Yes,
love
thank
you.
you.
Love the Onnit family. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, love you guys.
It's been
Thank
so
you all
fun.
so much. It's been a blast. We'll run it back again in the future.
All right.
Awesome.
Love you.
Thank you.